Namaskar. Welcome to Weekly Hangout with Sridhar Chityala ji. We have breaking information about oil purchases as far as India is concerned, and this could be something that could lead the way to the free trade agreement with United States. Is that going to be what's happening next? Let's welcome Sridhar ji. Sridhar ji, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel. How are you, sir?
Namaskar, doing very well, sir. How are you? Happy Navratri to you and best wishes during this auspicious period.
Yes, indeed. And let's just jump straight into it. Let's have the slide deck going. Sir, over to you.
Well, I think the Sree Iyer set the context quite aptly, and the situation is there's just a little bit of a breakthrough, at least in the eyes of many, that India has said that it is prepared to reduce the oil supplies from Russia and reconsider, but it also wants United States to give exemptions for access to Iranian and Venezuelan oil. That's the kind of the contextual framework for the show today. But also another important development is talking to the same people who, during the prior regime of President Trump and the prior regime of Joe Biden, invested significant amount of money in various fields, namely private equity and infrastructure, private equity and tech investments in what we call solar and alternative and logistics. And then, of course, there was also investments in the tech sector in terms of expansion of the opportunities. So all those discussions seem back on the table, and these things happened last week. And India's US nominated ambassador, Sergio Gore, was in some of these discussions. We'll cover that next in the next show. So this is the backdrop, and then we commence the show, Sree, and then Sree will obviously have his questions, and we'll try to respond and see where this is moving.
Yes, a request to all of you to please like this video, and if you have not already subscribed to our channel, do subscribe to our channel. We have breaking information. We're going to go to the back rooms. We are like a fly in the meeting rooms where the Commerce Minister, Goyal, is conducting various meetings. That's why I have the Wall Street backdrop to tell you that corporate America is now very much in the center of things. They're trying to make sure that regardless of what happens in the free trade deal, there is going to be continuing relationship ongoing India and the corporates of US. Let's go to the next slide, please. Over to you, sir. This is the total topics we're going to talk about.
Correct. So this is the Sree, do you want to cover this or do you want me to cover this?
No, all yours, sir. I just wanted to set the context.
Right. So first is India's crude oil challenge. We'll cover that. Who are the major producers in the world? We'll touch on that briefly. You may have seen this information, but it is important to recap it in the context of this discussion, because there's not much room for India to maneuver, especially the type, the price, daily one barrel cost per barrel price that they're looking at on an average on a daily basis for a year. So then who are India's largest suppliers? Who are the largest importers in the world to whom India can access? And what exactly is India's energy strategy, which is 30% of India's energy strategy is reliant on crude oil. And then who processed the most Russian Urals? That's, I hope it's not a surprise, but everybody knows who that is, but it's important to set the context. And then, of course, to conclude the continuation of these discussions on trade and investment, we summarized it, and Piyush Goyal continued his discussions and met with some of the key people who have been India's anchors. We should not forget US-India Pacific corridor led by Dr. Agi. They have also been playing a tremendous amount of role to preserve, and expand the Indo-Pacific trade corridor. So these are the topics that we cover. So we'll jump first to the India's crude oil challenge. Okay, despite global momentum for clean energy, crude oil still constitutes a significant component of not only India's energy consumption, but global consumption. Energy demand is growing at around 5% annually, higher than the global average. This is within Indian context. So it represents, as I said, the context, 30% of India's total energy consumption. And India's daily imports has crossed already 5 billion. It is about 4.7 to 5, whether they would 5 million barrels per day, 5 BPD, MBPD, 5 million barrels per day. 80% of Indian crude is imported. This is not a unknown fact. It constitutes a largest component of the India's import bill. It has grown steadily from around 600 billion to today in 2025. It is about $915 billion. So India's energy bill could very easily touch about $1 trillion, not too far from today, basically because India is a growing economy. So therefore, it is front, center, and back of India's foreign policy strategy and access to cheap oil so that it can pass those benefits to the customers. Now, Sree Iyer may debate whether they ever get passed to the customer. That I can't kind of debate why they don't do it, but they obviously, there's a significant benefit. Next slide.
Sir, the whole world is with me when I say this. When the price of crude per barrel goes up, instantly you'll see it. It doesn't matter which part of the world you live, the petrol pump there, it will immediately reflect that. On the other hand, when the price goes down, well, they'll think about it. This is what has been happening. These are the politicians are a breed by themselves. That's why somebody from the Britain said that politics is the last refuge of the scoundrel. I'm just leaving that. I'm not saying any particular name. I'm just telling you this is the reality that we live in. Sir, in the major producer, before we jump in this, I have one question. You know, about a couple of episodes ago, we talked about the fact that EU is going to mandate $47.60 as the price for Russian crude to try and limit the profits Russia can make off of its crude exports. Whatever has happened to that, sir, because the numbers are still at 68 today.
Well, I think that the how many countries are buying from Russia? That's the question.
Three.
Right?
Three.
Exactly. So it's about price, and that's why you look at the chart here. What does it say? Russia produces about 11.1 million barrels per day. Now, who are the two biggest consumers of that? The two biggest consumers of that are India and China. If out of the 11 million, if you take up 5 million, India takes up, or 4 million India takes up, or 3 million India takes up, there's only 8 million left. And 40% of the energy consumption is China. So if you take another 4 million or 5 million from China, or 5 million barrels per day, you're left with almost, a very small portion, which Russia and which even EU and some of the countries take up. So it's not the $47 or $48 per barrel. It's just to make sure that Russian oil is being still purchased and consumed at a price that is not flattening, or that's not bulging the bracket of the Russians in terms of the money that is done, at the same time not affecting the markets. So I think this is the game that they're trying to play, but this game has abysmally failed. The imposing price controls, etc., doesn't work, and EU amongst all countries must recognize that. But India tries to exploit and harness whatever it can. It has. So I think that's the response to that question. You can see between Russia and Saudi, who are in OPEC, they produce about they supply about 22.5 million barrels per day. Then of course you have Canada, then you have Iran. I mean, Canadian oil, US itself consumes, not extracting from its resources. Iran is a big player, Iraq is a big player, China also makes its own. But when you look at these major oil producers, what is the maneuvering room available for India? India cannot afford to buy Saudi Arabia or UAE, which is not in this chart, because it is it's a much higher cost, though the oil may be sweet, easy to less sulfur, easy to refine, etc., but they are priced at around $75 to $77, which they can't afford. So you have the Russia, UAE, and Saudi Arabia question, and then you have, India doesn't take much oil from Canada. It always has been either Saudis, UAE, Iran, and Iraq. Iran is now barred. So suddenly it found Russia as an able ally. So that doesn't have much room to maneuver. So which is why it's posing the question which is I consume 5 million barrels per day. Tell me from whom I can take. Indirectly asking the question to United States, you produce 20% of the oil. Will you give it to me at a price? It's not asked the question, but that could soon crop up in the negotiations, Sriji, which is to say, we purchase 7% from you, 6 to 7% from you. Can you cut the price? Then we will buy it from you and we'll reduce or will not buy from Russia. But that magic bullet has not happened as yet, Sri.
Yes, indeed. And viewers, you're going to see some interesting information. You have major producers. They also import significant amount of oil. You can understand, well, what the hell? I mean, you are exporting and you're also importing. Why do you have to do that? Why can't you 𝗤𝗘𝗙𝗧𝗖𝗎 𝗔𝗧𝙬𝗧? You just add export more. That's it, right? Why do you need to import? You can consume it internally too. Big question that Sridhar ji will answer why this has been happening. Whether it is United States, whether it is Russia or even Iran, I heard. They are importing also. They are exporting. They are also importing. So next slide, sir.
Right. So who is the list of largest crude oil suppliers to India, Sriji? So you can see they have, this is some of this data is average, though it is 2025, but they try to average it over a couple of years. Iraq is now occupying the top position at 20 to 22%. It had gone down, and United States was in that position. Saudi Arabia still is at 16 to 18%. Russia has come down to 18 to 20% in this rebalancing act that is happening to demonstrate to United States, hey, I am downsizing, but I cannot exceed a $70 or I cannot exceed a $65 barrel. Ideally, I would like to be in the 60 to 65 barrel because it is the biggest line item of expense in my balance sheet. So then you have United States 6 to 7%. This is the number that I had indicated. Remember, they still are doing Saudi despite it being higher cost but far more efficient from a refining point of view. Next slide.
Sir.
Right. Who are the largest?
I was coming to.
Who are the largest? It almost seems to coincide with the economic equilibrium of the nations. Who is the largest economy? United States. What's it's a $30 trillion economy. What is China? A $20 trillion economy. What is India? A $4.25 trillion economy. What is Russia? Way down. Saudi Arabia way down. What is Japan? It's in the 5th position at about a 4.2 trillion economy. But if you take a look at these are all in the United States terms gas guzzlers. These are countries which are guzzling gas and consuming huge amount of energy. So again, 20 million barrels per day, United States is importing. One of the biggest exporters is Canada. The other big exporter is also Mexico, but it's also getting some of the oil from Saudi Arabia. So I think what you are seeing here is the import. There is not much in terms of room for maneuverability, and within this context of import, India is playing a balancing game in terms of who it needs to source from and how it needs to move the needle. And that is why it's asking, release Iranian oil, release Venezuelan oil, then there will not be any reliance on Russia, which you believe is funding which our imports is funding, India's imports is funding the war. So give me relief, so to go. Then United States has to come forward and say, hey, then United States is going to say, I myself am importing a whole junk of oil. And the story is, then India will say, please ratify, redo your licensing policies. You cut a lot of supplies. You cut a lot of licenses during the past 4 years. Who asked you to cut? And during the past 4 years of the prior administration, they asked us to buy more Russian oil, and they stalled supplies from United States. So you really need to kind of, before you impose tariffs and all kinds of conditions, you really need to look at your own kind of policy. And long time ago, when United States used to have the car stickers, drill baby drill in the Alaskan basin, the story is that at that point of time, the theory floating around, though not probably true, that in United States wanted to preserve the last drop of hydrocarbons, and it wanted to starve the world first and then enjoy the power. That thing is evaporating very fast. Okay, you can see the top 10 countries consume 61 million barrels per day. The total capacity in the world is about somewhere between 90 and 100 million barrels per day. Next slide.
Before we go there, sir, there's an interesting data from US Department of Energy. Can we take this down and put that one, please? Yeah. So US Department of Energy says America is producing more oil than ever before, hitting 13.6 million barrels of oil per day in June, more than any other nation. We will continue to drill, baby, drill. Viewers, I deliberately asked this question to Sridhar Ji because I thought I will give him a googly. You're all going to see googlies going to be bold in the next half an hour or so. So, sir, let's get back to the mainstream. I have a question to ask you. Maybe it is tough, maybe it is easy. Sir, you know what my take is on this? The refining cost of crude. To say that this is the crude price that you get, then it takes 28 days and you maybe 14 days to refine it and then another 14 days to ship it. So somebody buys crude from, let's say XYZ is buying crude from Saudi Arabia. That crude needs to be refined. Who can refine it? Saudi Arabia itself can refine it. The country that is buying the crude can refine it, or you can have a third country do it for you because their processing costs are lower. This is what India has been doing since COVID. India's capacity to refine at such a low cost scares the shit out of everybody, sir. I'm telling you, US is because US is refining will just go out the window if India continues to do this thing. So basically you have a commodity. And India is not too far from the commodity, which is Middle East. I'm just giving mota, I could be wrong here. So this India's capacity to refine and at very low cost overheads is really becoming a big issue because many people are making crude is one of the biggest revenue producers. It don't set aside all the other things like, effluents, pollution, this, that, and all that stuff. All else set aside, this is a huge job generator, and India can be the best or the most cost-effective refinery producer. Now you assume that is true. I'm not saying it could be true, it might not be true. Assume that is true. Now go back a little bit. Look at why Nayara Energy was targeted. Look at why Ambani is being targeted, Adani is being targeted. There's another guy, SR, I think. They also do a lot of refining, and India also is being targeted because India's ONGC is a fairly Indian Oil Limited, ONGC, a lot of public sector undertakings also are doing a lot of refining. To me, it looks like it's a straight business play, and somehow there is some elbow room, hitting here, hitting there. But there's not much room in all these things. It's basically egos that have to be adjusted. In my opinion, I won't tell whose egos have to be adjusted. It could be Modi's, it could be Trump's, it could be yours. I'm just saying this. I like your comment on this before we go to the next thing, sir.
Of course, I was waiting for you to give me the opportunity. I think let's go back to DGI. People, maybe we should put the slow. We covered this long time ago when we said what India was doing. India was not harnessing. Out of 100%, over the last 12 years of Prime Minister Modi, India has built refining capabilities not only for domestic retailers, but also for overseas. To the extent India is exporting somewhere between 15 to 20% or maybe a little higher. So what would have been the case had India built refining capabilities when it has refineries in the country, in India? So somebody kind of went to sleep for almost 60, 62 years and suddenly woke up and said, hey, I can do something and I can move forward and be reliant. So that's the first part of it, which is namely that many countries did not, because the oil prices were relatively low and the refining capabilities existed to serve the needs. So what's the second? This probably we touched a little bit, but then now we'll address this. Many oil refineries have not done refreshment and redevelopment and upliftment of refineries. So there is a significant amount of capital that needs to be invested. So Saudi Arabia, which was the largest at that point of time, put a whole bunch of capital to do refurbishment of its refineries that actually increased the cost per barrel of the Saudi crude, notwithstanding the fact it is considered to be the most efficient. But nobody factored in that aspect of the pricing, and now you're beginning to see that that's the second kind of answer. The third, why United States, which has capacity to refine, uses Canada and other places to do the refining for it, and it basically gets the oil back. We covered this in the show when we said that two major, which constitute three major countries, which make up close to $2 trillion of US imports, are Canada, China, and Mexico. The largest component of Canada's cost is in the refined energy that flows back into United States. So US also went to sleep in terms of its refining, probably felt it can continue and sustain it and the energy prices. But where the rubber hit the road was in February 2021, when Russia occupied Ukraine and the prices shot up, and that's when the world had its problem. Sriji, so those are my three answers to your question.
Thank you, sir. Viewers, I just jokingly put a phrase in Telugu called "Daniki Deniki Saripotindi." That means hisab barabar in Hindi, and it means like you get some here, you go some there. At the end, it all comes out even. But the basic premise here is that oil has now become a tool that can be weaponized. Sir, you said about US being asleep at the wheel. So there is a small problem, sir. Every time US starts cranking up its shale processing, which is not as sweet as maybe that it can take from the ground. It is a little bit less sweet. Again, viewers, there are some conceptions and misconceptions. Sweet crude, sour crude, heavy crude, blah, blah, these things. These are all things where there is something that is already added. From the ground, it comes with that. You have to separate that before you refine. So the cost goes up or down. That's why Saudi always says, we have crude that is easy to refine. Therefore, we want a premium. Just set that thing aside for a minute. I'm just going by pure cost things. Sir, what happened, if you remember, in I think 2018 or 17, huge boom in shale processing. First term of Trump. Shale processing was booming where? North Dakota, South Dakota, and portions of Texas. Western Texas, where it's not from the ground, but they were trying to get these shale, and then they would process that. And shale processing is one of the most laborious. It requires a lot of water, and that water has to be somehow processed afterwards because it's very unclean. So for all this process to be profitable for US needed the price to be up at I think $65 or $70 minimum for all these shale companies to make a profit. And at that time, I believe the cost of crude was around 120 or 130. 2013-14, it went up to there. That's when all the investment went into shale because they said, hey, we can't afford to pay this thing. And then it started coming down. And why did it start coming down? Because Saudi Arabia said, look, US is eating our lunch. Even in the end of Obama reign, US was becoming a net exporter. That's the first time US even became a net exporter of crude, right? So what happened? All these shale companies started taking huge loans from various banks and started erecting capacity. There was a boom town. You read the articles about the state of North Dakota and South Dakota, huge boom town, no place to stay. People are just, the workers were going, the families were left behind wherever they were because there was good money until this correction in price hit the shale companies hard. Many shut down. So there is a compulsion for US even today that it keep the price of crude at 65, 68 for its own internal producers to make some money off of it. Shale, I believe now is at 35 to 40 for them to break even. and for Saudi to break even, for maintaining the lifestyle of 18 to 20,000 princes and princesses now, and all the other subsidies they give to their citizens, they need it to be around 75. That is break even. Okay, so you see how all these things are at work. There is one country which is willing to sell for less. Which is that country? You all know, viewers, that is the crux of the whole problem. Now you see why everybody is like, a frog on a frying pan. Everybody is jumping because there's one country that can actually easily cut it and still come out ahead. I will let you guess which that country is, which can do this thing. Let's go to the next slide. A lot of interesting dynamics, sir. We are not saying somebody is right, somebody is wrong. Each one has their own internal compulsion. Sir, over to you.
Yes. So what exactly is India's strategy before we get into how it can rebalance? India's strategy is very simple. 3 steps: building strategic oil reserves, which it has been doing, which it didn't have. It's like, if the oil is $50 a barrel, which it was, India doesn't have the capacity to borrow and buy and stockpile it until such time when the prices go up. It can draw from its reserves and use it. United States has, but blown away by the great Joe Biden. Okay, and then invest in renewable because solar and wind and biofuels. I don't know how far India is succeeding in its biofuels, but certainly solar, India is making a big play. But let's see how it tries to expand. One of the discussions of Piyush Goyal, the minister in United States, was with people who are willing to invest in India's solar and wind capacity, most notably solar. Okay, and then obviously continuous exploration of domestic oil fields to increase local production. So I think this is storage, renewables, and obviously further expansion of the domestic oil fields. So this is what it is attempting to do because this, as I said, everything requires oil. Next slide. Right, now the question comes up. If you see the top black line shows the crude imports, and then the bottom line shows the imports from Russia, right? So you can see the chart going along in very similar pattern, managing this beautiful balance of, if I am taking 10, 5 is from you. If I am taking 15, 7.5 is from you. So obviously to receive and get this processed, you need refining. So this is where Mr. Ambani helped Mr. Modi big time, because remember, from almost 2.1 million barrels, Russia's purchases shot up to about somewhere between 5 and 6, peaked at 6 million barrels. So you need capacity to refine it, and in came Mr. Ambani. So he is the one who helped India, and at his Jamnagar facility, and basically supported India through that difficult period, most notably COVID, and most notably post, during the Russian war, when we touched close somewhere between 150 to 200 dollars a barrel before we kind of got down. And of course, India was not charged that, but that just tells you there are some big players playing this game in close concert with the government. Next
one, please.
So India shifts oil sourcing. So India is ready to cut Russian oil, but wants leeway into Iran and Venezuela. This is what Venezuela is plenty of oil. Even the United States has said, hey,
Number one.
You guys, yes, says, then I'll get it from you, Venezuela. So therefore, what happens to Mr. Maduro? Oh, we'll take care of that later. So I think this is the negotiating. My feeling is that they may say Venezuela, but Iran is Proximus. Let's see how that battle plays out. Or Trump may say, I may be able to supply to you. Let that game play out. India also adds Nigeria and Angola just as a strategic context, but Africa, Caribbean is not a huge, he is not capable of huge, but they want to add up many people so that India doesn't miss out on any of these opportunities. So we started with huge tariffs on trade deficits. Then it became a game in terms of access to markets. Then it became a game in terms of how do you cut Russian oil. Then it became a game of, how we kind of jointly and what is it the share that I can get. Now I want to only have 1 minute digression here. As we speak, there's another show, another important development. Recall, South Korea had indicated that it is prepared to put $350 billion when its tariffs went down from 25% to 15%, went 12 to 15%. Today, and seizing that opportunity, President Trump said, I want $350 billion in cash so that we can deploy it. Now, South Korea has said, no way. We never said that we would give $350 billion. It's not financially feasible for me to give you $350 billion in cash. So there is a lot of kind of, what shall I say, game to go before this tariffs settle down and all these deals that were struck eventually to settle down. But in the meanwhile, there is some pain. And I think India is trying to take out this 25% burden of 25% penalty. It's willing, it probably will deal with the first 25% tariff until such time it can negotiate what it is aiming to achieve, 12 to 15%. Where this discussion started between India and United States is, we are one of the most preferred partners for you in number of fields, President Trump. So we should be given 12% because we have not been antagonistic and we have been pro-supportive in terms of in a number of kind of areas. So we'll probably soon get to that, hopefully, if the state of erratic mind of President Trump at least, stays steady for a few days, because this is what is causing all these hiccups in terms of day-to-day change in policies. Next slide.
Sir, before we go there, I just wanted to acknowledge one thing. 4.5 years ago, Sridhar Ji and I wrote this book. I mean, his name doesn't appear in author column, but he had as much input in this as I did. And guess what? We predicted everything that is happening now to the dot, precisely what is happening. We talked about Venezuela, we talked about elections, we talked about how much of the research was done in Venezuela. Look, viewers, this is a book of fiction, which is why we are not getting deleted anywhere. But if you really want to understand how politics has evolved in the last 10, 15 years, and now, Democrats are jumping up and down because in Texas, the Republican-run administration is trying to, redistrict so that Republicans have an advantage. What Democrats want to do, they want to do the same thing in California, where there are a small islands of places where Republicans do eke out with, meager wins. They want to do that. So this is just a joke. I mean, what happens in United States, it's a democracy, it's mobocracy, it's something else. It's not democracy. It is MOCK, democracy. Next one, please.
Democracy.
Democracy, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Sir, go ahead, sir.
Okay, so trade strategic discussions going on. I think I touched on this. Steve Schwarzman from Blackstone has always been supportive. I think they put somewhere between 300 to 500 billion dollars into India's infrastructure and MSME, and I think so. Our Piyush Goyal is met with them and asked them for continued support for the infrastructure. So then they met with IBM and a couple of other investment banks to talk about supporting the solar as well as the logistics in terms of distribution, etc., with them. Then the trade discussions are simultaneously going on in terms of these tariffs and where there can be some leverage. There is a fear whether Trump will insert another rider, which is to say, we'll continue to buy your pharmaceutical products provided you manufacture them in United States. Right? A lot of them is now manufactured. During the Trump period, a lot of purchases by Indian companies of the US as well as the FDA approvals were obtained during that particular period. That's what has helped the pharmaceutical impetus in terms of a huge export factor into United States. That may come up. Then, so the trade discussions are going on. United States Indo-Pacific Corridor Forum led by Dr. 𝗤𝗏𝗍 that though they are playing a big role in making sure that the Indian advocacy is maintained at a business, policy, and industry level and helping Mr. Goyal. There also was a discussion between United States and Israel. There was also a discussion between UAE and Israel with Benjamin Netanyahu. And I think they're politely reminding what's happening to UI corridor, which is United States, Israel,
U2I2.
U2I2, United States, Israel, and UAE, India. It's a very big corridor from energy. Remember the Haifa, it was during this U2I2 is when that Haifa corridor was won by Adani in terms of developing offshore capacity. So all these point, but we can't kind of jump the gun, point to some positive momentum for a resolution with all of the strategic issues being put back on the table for finding a resolution rather than arbitrariness that has led the game thus far.
I think we are done with the slide deck. We have a few questions for you, Sridhar Ji. Tough questions. When it comes to asking questions, many of our questionnaires are PhDs. It's a compliment. Pawan Kishore wants to know, Namaskaram, sir. Do you think that will Trump administration support India in becoming a manufacturing hub alternative to China, even if we accept to their demands?
I think India, there are two ways to look at it. The investments from global firms like 𝗤𝗏𝗏𝗏, Blackstone, BlackRock, those investments flows will occur because remember, India there's no economy which is growing around 6% plus or 7% plus. That's India, and also India is on a ramp up from, if I have to use 4.5 trillion to a 10 trillion or a 20 trillion economy. So therefore, when you see a rapid economic acceleration, that's where asset growth and profits arise from. So that is why there's definitely industrial support. As far as the policy support from Trump, it remains to be seen whether clearly in defense sector he has conceded ground and United States can set up for collaborate with India in setting up manufacturing facilities in India. I think semiconductor as well, they are prepared to support. Software development, they're prepared to support. I don't know whether lock, stock, and barrel manufacturing, because United States is suffering from manufacturing drain on a holistic basis. So it remains to be seen how this battle gets played out between India, China, and United States. Clearly, China has such huge capacity, it's not going to be sympathetic. This has been my issue or position. All China will say is, I can supply you more at cheap than what happens to India. India has its own ambitions. So that's a very, to answer your question, it remains to be seen. As far as US and India, it will be selective, but they have to get past the next 2 months, October and November, before clear policies will be rolled out as we set into 2026.
Next one, please. Gitanjali wants to know, out of syllabus, EU planning to use frozen assets of Russia to fund Ukraine. Your views? I have my views, but you go ahead first, sir.
No, this is the second time this question has been raised. I said you can't just simply take frozen funds and use it. There is international accountability. So therefore, my view is they will not until there is a clear ruling that these frozen funds now have to be rolled into countries which invested in the protection of Ukraine and how the allocation of those funds must occur. Unless there is a very clear policy and very clear what you call a law enacted and supported, they cannot touch the money.
Gitanjali, that is all law written on paper. I will tell you, I watch this thing very, very closely like a hawk. Many specialists out of Europe are telling me that Europe has swaha, the 300 billion that they had frozen in US, the assets of Russian crude. That's one of the reasons why Russia is not listening anymore. Okay, these are all, underlying layers going on. They are pointing fingers at France. They are saying that they were holding up to 70 billion in assets, and 20 billion has already been, only 20 billion is left. And France is trying to explain, or even Europe, we should say that, look, we are only taking the interest part of the frozen assets, and we are only taking that as reparation. Confusing math. Just wait. That is why EU is holding out for a war, all-out war, because they have built up impossible positions where they just cannot meet the obligations that they have on their debit side. And if war comes, everything gets wiped out. People just say, oh, don't ask these questions. We are in a war. We are at war. That is Europe's answer for whatever happens. This is what Europe wants. This is what most of the people who have been watching this for 20, 30, 40 years. In fact, if you go back and study history, there is somewhere this problem that, countries have, run up debt. Okay, one important number that people quote: if your debt payments exceed your defense expenditure for a superpower, that is a sure shot sign that that superpower is on the decline. And they point out to what happened to Germany. They point out to what happened to United Kingdom. And today, it's the same problem that is facing the United States. As a superpower status, US is going to lose it, because today, its debt payments are more than the amount of money it is spending on its defense. 700 plus places where US has its bases across the world. Can they sustain it? Go back to 1956, Suez Canal. When Nasser nationalized it, UK, Israel, and France went to war and tried to blockade it. You know what the decisive blow came from? United States. They said, no, you're not doing this. And once US took the opposite view, everything collapsed. And after that, UK was not the same again. It happened under the prime ministership of Anthony Eden, considered one of the best foreign ministers UK ever had, because he was there during the Second World War, towards the latter part and all that stuff. He was the successor of Winston Churchill for like 20 years or something. He had to wait for a long time before Churchill would step down. Long story. Anyway, point I'm trying to make is there is a problem now about EU not being able to stand up to its commitments. And many say that US is going to collapse, but Europe is collapsing faster, viewers. That's all I can say from all the videos I'm seeing. And I always look the point and counterpoint also before I make this observation. EU is in more problems than US is. US also has problems. Just wait and see. Why is Trump insisting hard cash, and going hard at India? Because India is not willing to put hard cash. India is not willing to put hard cash, just like South Korea is now dragging its feet. You see, why? Because you... Sir, go ahead, sir.
Finish. Sorry, I thought you finished. You finished, Sriji.
I think interest payments are going to cross $1 trillion a year now, sir, for the United States.
Yeah. So I think you touched on, let me try to give my response on 3 specific areas. French spending, there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation that comes out of Europe. If I take, for example, what happened during Iraq, Kuwait war, a lot of money was frozen by Saudi Arabia. Most of it was recovered and given back to the Kuwaitis. There is still frozen money in Swiss banks going back to World War II, pre-World War II. Okay, it's not been taken by anybody. So my answer is what France is doing, maybe from the money that it got from Senegal and other countries, and sitting in it, and it is using. But clearly, based on all my kind of banking knowledge and information, I don't think they have touched the Russian money as yet. Okay, they may be earning interest, and the interest maybe is what they can all be entitled to. And so the money, this is my view on that point, which is namely whether they have started to use the frozen assets of Russia. So that's number one. My second thing that relates to your point around the US, US is there is no more a superpower. Let's kind of agree. We have a confusing and chaotic global coalition that seems to be more point-to-point kind of resolution rather than having a globality in its structure. Nothing is working. There's no coalition that is working today. Okay, US is on its own, China is its own. One day you have China, Russia, and India. Another day you have India, Russia. Another day you have China, Russia, and then you have US, India. So there is no consistent and coherent kind of leadership because there's no leader. Again, their leaders emerged and tried to get a policy perspective we don't have. So clearly there's going to be no superpower. There's going to be a broad little coalitions that's kind of going to emerge. Yes, US has got a debt problem, and US also has got an interest burden on its balance sheet, driven by three major factors. First and foremost, there is a diverging gap between receipts and expenses. Receipts is the money that we receive. Expenses is what we pay for funding. The US expenses has gone out of kilter. Okay, around of which clearly $983 billion this year and very soon $1 trillion is the interest cost. But when you have an annual $2 trillion difference between receipts and expenses, and that gap is not kind of narrowing, we're going to have a blown out balance sheet. What they're going to do, I don't know, but that right now, as we look ahead, it's a train wreck running down. At some stage, sooner or later, they may need to talk about asset sales in United States. Okay, that's the second answer on the deficit and the US being a superpower. And I think finally, whether any country would be willing to pay in dollars. Remember, this is where Qatar, UAE, Saudi Arabia, even Japan, Korea, and India committed, and Vietnam committed to put money into the US ecosystem, not as a cash, but investment into specific areas and specific industries. Capital expansion and credit expansion is what Trump is fighting, and he's not going to win with the central bank. As far as the capital investments, he's trying to come up with this tariff. He's going to fail there also. And so he really has to then eventually get back to the domestic balance sheet. This is my 2 cents, Sriji.
Sridharji, I want to add to what you just said. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just going to add something to what you said. Our great state of California, and you have taken digs at us, and I push back on New York. Both are, on their way to the bottom. What has happened, viewers, is that we are shouldering so much illegals that the only way that these states can even generate some revenue is by taxing us to hell in terms of water rates, utility rates, and also hiking insurance premiums. Insurance premiums have become laughable now. What people are doing, and I'm telling you, this is a reality. The joy of living in California is turning sour for many people, especially the boomers in the later stages, because they don't have the kind of income that is required just to pay your property taxes, your insurance bills, your health insurance, your car insurance, your this insurance, your earthquake insurance, all these things. There's just not enough money. So what people are trying to do is they are taking chances. If your house is paid down, you don't need to have home insurance. Yeah, so what? It's a shaking ground. It'll all collapse. We will rebuild it. We'll build the house of our dreams. It'll take some time. So people are taking that kind of an attitude. So what is happening is what you said, sir. The revenue side is just collapsing, sir. People have stopped buying home insurance. If home insurance goes, earthquake insurance is also going to go. You see, all these things are behemoths in California. I mean, you people paid extra money so that they could have their house facing the Pacific Ocean while there is sea erosion. You look at San Diego area, some portions of LA area, all these people. Okay, so it is just going out of whack, viewers, and this is the problem that is facing the government. California, if you really strictly go by it as a state, it is the 4th largest economy. It is bankrupt. It is bankrupt. They are trying to hide the illegals by putting them in concentrated areas but you get stuck in those areas in San Jose, which used to be the capital, and just continues to be the capital of Silicon Valley, where you have Google headquartered, okay, and Apple's most of the stuff happens in and around San Jose area, and you have some of the highest numbers of illegals also being housed. It's just not a pleasant state of affairs, Sridhar Ji. You said about Manhattan stinking what 3 years ago when the first wave of illegals came. Sir, they all came into US, but to New York, but they settled down in California, sir.
You are a very, very, very generous and broad-shouldered host. That I have to kind of salute you and your state, Sriji.
We have a nutcase as a governor. I'm looking forward to what Trump is going to do with the Soros group. He's been citing RICO, but I want to see some action before I comment on that. Next question, please.
What is the actual reason for war to be stopped? Is it
rare metals mining at stake?
Well, I think Russia has seized the opportunity that there is a global vacuum in power. Okay, number one, it sees Euro as a weakening state, group of states, and the whole legal structure with which the EU is formed, where you have to have consensus for every decision. All it needs is Belarus to kind of veto. All it needs is Belarus and some other state to veto. The policy, falls out. So therefore, he sees a moment, great moment where he can retake parts of Europe. And that's one of the reasons why that he entertained this concept of entering Ukraine. The second, he was frustrated and he has no land access to the sea in Crimea. So therefore, and that conduit, he needs Ukraine. That's number two. Number three, whether it is deliberate, whether it is misinformation, whatever you may want to call, in certain pockets of Ukraine, the ethnic Russian or Russian-speaking people is more than 60%. This is the same problem many countries will face when one ethnic group exceeds by a large segment its domicile. Then you're going to have challenges. It wants everything to be tailored to that. It is just a matter of coincidence. And then finally, Angela Merkel, just as she did with Obama, opened the Pandora's box with Russia by making Russia the single largest supplier of both natural gas and oil. So the entire Europe became dependent. Everything was hullabaloo, and until Trump exited and Biden came in, and very, very inappropriately, United States and UK launched its first tirade by sending ships and other stuff into the Russian Sea. And the problems then began to unfold.
We are giving you a history of what happened in like last decade in 10 minutes. So a lot to absorb there. Desi Stan wants to know, America knows its oil is not viable, too expensive in a free market. I don't think so. Crude is always sellable, thus interfering in regime changes to take control of cheap, viable oil. Your thoughts, sir?
I don't know where regime changes, this modeling goes on. Many people put it to CIA, many people put it to some other people. Clearly, there was a tilt during the Biden and Obama period in many places in the world. All of them failed, and the question of, cheap oil. I mean, what cheap oil? Iraq is a disaster for United States. Iraq is a disaster in terms of what it does. Nothing has come out. Okay, I know some of these companies, I won't mention, benefited in most notably in Kirkuk, in the Mosul area in up north. And what's the name of that region that they wanted independence that fizzled out, Sriji?
Quds, sir. Kurdistan.
Kurdistan. No, one more. That fellow in that. Anyway, I forget the
ISIS?
name. No. That's where the oil mills are, in Kirkuk and Mosul.
Mosul, so sir. Mosul area is where it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Kurdistan. No, Kurdistan are the Peshmergas in this side. Okay, we'll deal with it another day. So the story is that that area does not materialize. Nothing materialized. Okay, and that is why there's a free reign for Turkey, despite its economy in complete tatters. It is using these war games rather than occupying the territory rather than anything else. So I don't know whether there is cheap oil has been the pursuit. It's just the guerrilla war, or somebody, Ahmad Chalabi comes and plays golf with Dick Cheney and says to him, the world is yours, Iraq is yours, if you come in and step in and do it. And then, you come in and step, and then what happened from day one? It's been a disaster as far as Iraq is concerned. No need to tell much about Afghanistan. That's another disaster. Well, you all know what's happened with Pakistan. They put a lot of money over years and years and years. What's happened to the United States with the money? Nothing. No strategic kind of outcome that's come out of it. By the way, there is also, Sriji, just around the corner from where, there was a protest by Bangladeshis for Muhammad Yunus to say go back to Pakistan. There's a huge protest during the United Nations UNGA session.
UNGA, right. Akshay wants to know, thank you, Akshay. Bharat has the largest refining capacity in the world, as far as I know, 5 million barrels per day. What is making Trump and Ricardo angry is buy from Russia in rupees and sell in dollar to the world.
Yeah, he's retarded because he's saying, what you call, India is indirectly helping to fund the Russia-Ukraine war. They want the war to stop because all of them are bleeding. They need to spend money that they don't have, whether it is EU or whether it is United States.
Okay, so what is this? I can't see the title. Can you take off the overlay for a second, please? Thank you. Major refineries in the world. Jamnagar complex is number 1 from the looks of it, sir.
Yes, 1.24 million barrels per day.
Yeah.
Ulsan is in Korea. Yeah, keep going.
Now you get the idea, guys. You have to pinch your fingers to get this thing to be large. Sometimes we have these limitations on what we can put on the screen. And there's another one which is probably better. He has done it. Wonderful.
Sorry, Sriji. Yeah. Another important point before it loses memory. Also, Piyush Goyal met with Sultan Ahmad bin Sulayem, who is minister in Al Nahyan government in terms of this is the energy and U2I2 kind of policy. He also, the UAE foreign minister also met with Netanyahu, contrary to all of the people, because they see dialogue with Israel both as a peace corridor for Western Asia as well as partnership. Sorry, I interrupted, Sriji. I forgot that point.
No worries, sir. Let's go to the next question. Rao Garu wants to know, why are we not talking about prospecting of oil in Andaman Seas? It's going to take a lot of time. It's in the sea. You have to build a lot of infrastructure. Just wait. It takes a few years before something can come out. Bombay High, I think it took a decade before India could produce something out of Bombay High, which is offshore from Bombay where they drill for oil. Because I think Assam has run out. The oil that India used to get easily from Assam, that has run out. So it takes time. Let's not count our chickens before they hatch. Next one, please. It's natural gas that has been found. So it's not even crude. There are slight differences. I mean, natural gas can be used, but India uses LPG, liquefied petroleum gas, not natural gas, for your household consumption. You have this already. This is what the infrastructure can do. So you have all these things to deal with too. Maithiliji wants to know, does shale gas also have the same calorific value as crude oil? Sridharji, you are the expert.
Yeah, I think yes.
Next one, please. Ameya Rupal wants to know, should India build Nord Stream like pipeline from Gulf to reduce shipping cost of oil? This will also eliminate frequent blockade issues in Gulf of Aden.
They are considering it. They are considering this option. This is where
I think Pakistan will break, sir. These guys will be. It's not easy. It's not easy. You have hostile nations there.
They can do it, Shriji. They can do it. They can do it. But cables, internet cables run under sea, Sree.
That's true. But then you are now hearing about Chinese ships that are specialists in cutting these cables. They are not supposed to do something like, for example, drag the anchor. They drag the anchor for miles on end, sir. I'm telling you, some of the things that China has tried to, they've been caught doing this. I'm not talking about speculation. They've been caught doing this. Anyway, Galt wants to know, who changed election in America with a few $100,000 of ads on Facebook?
Who changed? Is obviously, I think you should send him your book, Shriji.
Yes. Read all about it. Read all about it. That's it, sir. Thank you so much. Wonderful session. Yes. And like Star Trek, we have boldly gone where nobody else has gone before to talk about some of the underlying, pulls and pressures of oil and why things are happening at the higher level, what you're seeing inside, what is really going on. Negotiations, hard negotiations still going on. So something is going to happen soon. Thanks once again, Sridhar Ji. We'll looking forward to seeing you again next Sunday, same time. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Thank you. And have a wonderful Navratri, Saraswati Puja and 𝗤𝗍𝗫𝗍𝗫.